Power or groovy soca?
Both.
Small, sweaty fete or big stage concert?
Big stage. I don't like to sweat either.
I don't like the sweat either, but the small fetes tend to have vibes.
The irony is that's what I'm playing for after this interview. And it's going to have vibes. It's just I'm going to be leaving with my shit off and things. So.
This might be a little spicy, but I'm going to ask anyway. Patrice or Destra? Hey everyone, I'm Alyssa Rose Cooper, and thank you so much for watching. As an independent journalist and content creator, it's important for me to always deliver the best quality production to you. So if you're enjoying this channel and want to see more videos like this, please consider showing your support with a donation. There's also a monthly subscription you can join where you'll be able to access exclusive content just for members. Well, hello there.
No, I wasn't even sure if we started to roll.
Yeah, he's recording now.
Oh, rolling. Okay.
So we just recorded now. So how are you?
Good, you know. I was hoping for a little warmer day here in New York, but what are you gonna do?
Well, I'm pleased that you were able to make this. So you are DJ Gel, also known as the Soca Boss. Can you tell me a little bit how you even came up with that in the first place?
Honestly, a lot of the drops, the marketing tools, I'll be very honest, I took from Twitter. Big up Trini Twitter, Black Twitter, Caribbean Twitter. I took everything from Twitter, which is now what, X, but nobody calls it that. At a point in time when my mixes were coming out and people were listening from all over the world, people would go on Twitter and vent, right? Twitter is like the water cooler of society, right? So people go on, they leave their thoughts, and I kid you not, I'm going through all the things that are said about me. Because the cool thing about Twitter, you could go and search anything you want. Any topic, like, for example, the president or politics or a famous person, you could search it and see what people are saying. So when I'm checking out my name, I'm like, Gel plays all these tunes that the Soca Mafia don't want you to hear, and Gel is the Soca Boss. I was like, write it down, write that down, and I just turn it into drops because the voice of people is really the voice of God, and as opposed to me trying to give myself like a little title or something, why not take what the people are saying and use it?
Nice. So how did you feel about, them even saying that about you in the first place?
A lot of it, I won't lie, from the mixes and how I play live is intention-based. So in order to stand out in the market, right, as a DJ or in any profession that you have to think about what sets you apart from the millions of other competitors out there, right? So whether you want to be a baker or a dancer or a journalist, right, you have to figure out what's the it factor that you would have that would make you stand out. And once the market sees that, then the rest is history. So for me, it wasn't a surprise. I was just thankful that I was able to achieve what I had set out to do.
So you actually brought it up. I wasn't going to ask, but since you brought it up.
Sure.
The Soca Mafia, does that really exist? You had to take a drink, all of that for that?
They could have spiked the coffee with something. They could have done a rum in the coffee. Does it exist? The short answer is yes. Is it relevant? No. Meaning, in the past, in like the 90s or the 80s, especially in Trinidad and Tobago and other parts of the Caribbean, what was then traditional media, so like the radio stations, the party DJs, promoters, is alleged that there's this underground society or group of individuals that were controlling what music would play within the carnival season and within the space of soca music. I think now, especially in the early 2010s with the rise of social media and TikTok and streaming and all these different platforms now, the Soca Mafia is not so relevant anymore. I think that if you really want to achieve success in soca, you can. You just have to put your money behind marketing dollars, TikTok, and have a really good campaign. Because even now in present day, at the time of this recording, there's an artist who's from Jamaica by the name of Classic Fresco Bar that has a soca song that's trending even outside of Trinidad Carnival. It did not play at all in Trinidad, to my knowledge, but he's on the charts in Guyana, Bermuda, and Jamaica as well. So if you know the song Dancer, show them they use a big dancer. Where you wrong? Tell them they use a big dancer. That's from TikTok. And that's a campaign that he started, and even doing like the little video reactions of people listening to the song. So
Yeah,
is Soca Mafia relevant? No.
Yeah. So the thing is, I know you said that you don't really feel like it's relevant. So when you hear people talk about things like, I'm just gonna say like Marshall won this because of the Soca Mafia and this, like, what goes through your head? Because you don't feel that it's a relevant thing, right?
I think that I'll say this. Marshall is the king of soca, right? I think that particularly this year, Marshall worked hard for his road match. I think that he did all the necessary things to start his campaign. He dropped his music video. He went by some of the best writers in the industry who did Stage Gone Bad for Kesaniwa, which is also a road match winner from 5 years ago. And Marshall worked hard for that road match, you know. He was everywhere. He worked with some of the kids as well too. So he really campaigned the song. And in my humble opinion, I wish a lot more artists, especially the younger ones, would take a page out of his book and really work hard and do what they need to do to get to that point. Because you could sit around and complain and wait for opportunities, or you could create your own opportunities, like classic Fresco Bar.
Cool. How did you get into soca in the first place?
That's so for me. My mom actually used to be a promoter. She and a couple of her friends would used to throw parties, and Little Gel would go and accompany her to the events while she would set up. So she was big on decor, food, not so much the music part. And for me, and for really my family, no one I know was immediately in entertainment. So even growing up, like I had to learn everything about entertainment, mixing two songs together. And thank God for technology, I got to learn through virtual DJ, which was a free program at the time. We could just go and play and learn how to mix and blend. So when my mom used to go and set up the events, the first place I would go is by the DJ. Because I was always fascinated to figure out like, oh, why did they mix these two tunes together? Or when they were doing the sound check, like why did they pick this song to test the bass and the sound and all of that versus like something else? And when the events would go on and I was still allowed to be there, that's where I stuck up most of the time. And I say, you know what? I think I want to do this. And the rest from there is history. I mean, I am Trini, so soca naturally stuck with me anyways. What would play in the house? I was introduced to Kiddies Carnival too when I was at the age of 5. So for me, soca has always kind of been my life.
Were you born in Trinidad?
No.
Where
I was
were
actually
you?
born in New York.
Okay. So talk to me about like your upbringing. Like you were born here.
But part of, was in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. So can you talk about like what was that like?
Very traditional. I mean, if you're a child of a Caribbean parent or Caribbean household, you know, like you're raised with manners. You're taught a lot about community and even the people within society, right? You respect the neighbors. Sometimes the neighbors come like family too. They know your business, especially in certain parts of Trinidad, especially if you're from like South or Central Trinidad. Your neighbors are essentially your family too. So the upbringing of that for me was just, everybody know your business. But it's a sense of community. Everybody comes together. So unlike New York City, where everyone's kind of minding their own business, although it have the little Caribbean within, Brooklyn and Queens and little Guyana and little Trinidad, it's still, the States is still very vastly different from the Caribbean.
Did you ever feel like you were kind of like living in two worlds? Because with me, so I told you, I'm from Boston originally. Both of my parents are from Trinidad. But they still raised us like culturally, however. But I went to school in a predominantly white place. I was usually the only black kid. And then on top of that, not just black, had Caribbean heritage. So I'd bring in weird food and all these kind of things. And it was just really difficult for me. So I felt like a lot of times I was living like two worlds because I couldn't dare go home and tell my mother, oh, I can't, don't send me with that to school. Like I can't do that. But at school, I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to do particular things. So I always felt like I was shifting between both worlds. Because you were traveling back and forth, did you ever feel like you were in this in-between zone?
Yes. Later on in life, because even where I did grow up in New York too, in Brooklyn, like if you know Crown Heights, if you know East Flatbush, it's predominantly Caribbean. I would say that there were times when I did have to code switch. So if I had to do any program in either downtown Brooklyn or in the city, I would have to change how I talk because I had a Trini accent as well growing up too. I had to switch it to an American accent so people would understand me. Yeah, I think everybody has kind of gone through that code switching, whether you're Caribbean or not, because how you would talk with your friends is not how you're going to talk in corporate or talk with your teachers, etc., etc.
So if you had to tell somebody, I need to go to the car across the street in your American accent, how would that sound?
Oh my goodness. Is the fact that I have to think about it is listen, I need to go to the car to get something. I'll be right back.
It's a hard try now, right? All right, cool. All right, so how do you decide what kind of music goes into your rotation? Because you don't just play soca, right? So what makes you decide what's going to go into your rotation?
In terms of what, like the mixes, parties?
Mixes, or like even when you are going to parties, like if you're going to, I don't know. So I guess too, sometimes when I see fetes happen, yes, we hear soca, but there are DJs that's playing other music. How do you decide what you are going to play for a particular party?
Okay. I'll give two scenarios. If it's a fete and I'm instructed that it's only soca, so for example, we're still fresh off for the Trinidad Carnival season. At the time of this recording, Miami Soca Weekend has passed. I would majority play soca. Like if we're in a fete, that's usually the code. And for me, I would show up like an hour or two early, hear what the previous DJ played. If I can't, I'll ask the DJ before me, show me a history of what was played so I don't try to repeat songs. Most times I know what my first song will be, but after that it's usually freestyle. And it's really based on what the crowd is vibing to. So a lot of the times, like the DJs, they won't look at the crowd. So they'll get like their laptop face and be down in the laptop, trying to mix and scratch and bang and impress the crowd when that might not necessarily what the crowd wants to hear. Like, yes, you could do all the scratching and all the fancy thing, but if somebody's coming to a fete, a party, or to free up, or they had a bad day at work, or they're stressed out like no tomorrow, and they just want to have that euphoric feeling, you have to watch them and play for them. So if they're whining down low or they're jumping up to Cass or Marshall or Bungie, you have to feed into that.
You said so many things that I felt naturally. One of it is that you ask other DJs or the DJs that play before you what they played. Is that something that happens? Because the thing is that, I mean, that's great that you do that, and I think that's awesome because I always know as the patron, it's annoying for me to go to a party. I hear a DJ play a set and the next DJ comes and they play the same thing. So it's great that you do that. But now I'm like, do other DJs even pay attention to that? Because they'll come on and play the same thing.
This happened to me a lot in the Carnival season too. There was a point in time where I told the DJs what had played. I showed them the history. I even showed them, like I said, listen, I started with, for example, The Greatest Band Over by Young Brother, the big links to them. Say, this played already. The following DJ comes on. Guess what he plays? Let's say he starts with. Same exact.
The Greatest Band Over.
So I think that, is it a practice that happens? I mean, yes, it's up to the DJ whether or not they want to play it. Because there's this fear in the industry that if the crowd doesn't have their hand in the air, if they're not singing out a song, you're not doing a good job. Which is far from the truth. Sometimes the crowd just wants to vibe. They may not know the new music, so they have to learn the new music. But because of the pressure that they get from promoters and the pressure that they get being booked continuously, they feed into this hype that I must play all the new music or all the trendy music in order to sustain their careers, more or less.
And I also like that you said that you pay attention to what the people are vibing to and things, because that's another thing. I remember talking to somebody years ago, a person that was also playing music, and I said to him, I'm like, I feel like DJs play for themselves. A lot of times they play for themselves. And he's like, that's not true. People are jumping this. I'm like, all right, because for me, if I pay my money, I'm just not going to stand there and look stupid. I want to enjoy myself, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to to like actually play for me.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of times they play for themselves. So I like the fact that you pay attention to people because we pay that money. We want to hear what we want to hear.
Correct. And one extra tidbit advice I'd give to a lot of the DJs too: show up early. If you can show up 1 or 2 hours early, show up early. Don't hide behind the stage. Don't hide in a section if you have to play in a club. Go in the crowd. Because the best way to determine what the people want is you could tell what they're vibing to when you're in the crowd. So one thing that I love to do when I show up early, I go in the crowd, talk to people, high five, whatever the case may be. But I also watch too to see what they're responding to and what me as a party goer as well, because I am a fan of the music, I'm a fan of soca and the fat culture. What I would want to hear and what I think, based on what people are vibing to, what was missing from the other people's sets.
Awesome. All right. Have you ever played a tune and instantly knew the crowd was about to lose their minds?
What do you mean?
Like you played a tune and you just knew, like, you knew that in your head that when you were going to play this song, that it's going to rev them up. And when you played it, they just went nuts.
Oh yeah, all the time.
What song sticks out in your head the most when you do that? Or have you done that?
So, over the years, it would have been In the Water from St. Vincent. In the Water.
Okay.
It would have been Nasty Up from Problem Child, also from St. Vincent. In recent times, Party from Marsha Montano.
Okay.
And it's another big tune that did very well last year. Carnival, Contract, and DNA.
Mm-hmm. So from your view, when you do that and you see everybody just go nuts a while, how does that make you feel?
Good. I mean, it's a euphoric feeling that I think that a lot of people outside of our culture don't get to experience, right? So there's a song from Freetown Collective and Private Ryan, Feel the Love. Mm-hmm. And there's this line that goes, people live 1,000 lives but never feel this free. I think what our music and what Carnival and Fets do for us is give us this level of freedom that we need. So a lot of what we do as DJs and even the promoters is like a level of healing that we don't know that we're getting, right? Like the music is therapy for us, and Fets and Carnival, although it's an escape, it's a healthy way for us to actually let go of all this stress and what I like to call generational trauma that we've all suffered through colonialism and slavery and indentureship that we can get now because our ancestors left this music for us.
So what's the biggest trauma you think you have experienced that soca or playing the music has helped you?
Oh, Lord Father.
I tell you, I pay attention to what you're saying.
We'll be here all day. We'll be here all day. Does licks count?
Licks is traumatizing too, okay?
There's so much, because I think for me, is the lack of accountability across the board, from our parents to our grandparents. Like, they don't ever want to say, sorry, they're wrong. It's funny, this meme on social media goes around where when your parents want to apologize, the first thing they say is, come eat. Because
that is so true. So true.
Because they're incapable. I'll say majority of our parents and their parents' generation were incapable of apologizing and admitting when they were wrong. And you're seeing that now in the Caribbean and in the region with the government, right? Like, there's no accountability for anything. So you have high levels of crime, high levels of, poor infrastructure, because no one's holding them accountable. So all this crime going on doesn't get solved. Then you have the roads falling apart, buildings not being maintained, the schools and them, like, they're not getting the adequate funding. All because we don't hold them accountable. Because that's a value that I think that we're not taught from colonial times when the slave masters and them would just hit the slaves and, no one was being held accountable for these things. Even now in the Caribbean, like, we still have a lot of colonial statues that still exist. We're still acknowledging Christopher Columbus for what he didn't discover shit.
I know. Mm-hmm.
Like, it was a whole fight down in Trinidad the other day just to remove the 3 ships off the coat of arms to replace it with the pan.
I know.
Something that we created as a country, a national instrument, but they're fighting it down because of these ships. It's still a sign of colonialism. Were there other things that we could have, used the money for? Yes. Resources, yes. But it's still a sign of colonialism, and we have to remove those things too. And we have to hold ourselves accountable for all this shit that we would have caused.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, because you just brought something up and it triggered something to me. What are your thoughts about, the situation when it comes to crime in Trinidad? Because I actually had somebody ask me the other day about wanting to visit Trinidad. And she asked me, she's like, is it safe for me to go? This is while I was in Trinidad. She's like, is it safe for me to go because I hear about the kidnappings and this and that? And I'm just like, well, my stance is, yes, it's sad that things happen, but I'm like, I could sit in my apartment in Brooklyn and something is happening right then and there.
People getting set on fire on the train.
Right.
The other matter of fact, this week gone, 2 teenagers actually assaulted a train conductor.
I saw.
So, crime is everywhere. In terms of the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, are you asking me how I would fix it, or if I would advise people to go? What's the question?
How do you feel about it? Do you think there's any, because we were talking about mentioning like the politics or like the accountability and stuff. Do you feel there's anything that can be done?
Oh, yeah.
Make things better.
We keep going back to accountability. I think that we don't hold our leaders accountable. Like the Ministry of National Security to the Commissioner of Police currently, they're not being held accountable for the high rise in crime. The solution right now is a state of emergency that, quite frankly, isn't doing much. You're giving the police officers and them permission to search and enter people's premises without, waiving the constitutional right? But it's not really helping. People are still getting murdered. I don't know about the kidnappings. I think the State Department is a little outdated with their travel advisory. But I do feel like there's a lot more murders happening right now and people aren't being held accountable. Is there a way to fix that? Yes. I think that we have to be honest with ourselves that Trinidad and Tobago is kind of in a narco state when it comes to the drugs and the things that are being brought into the country. Meaning that drugs are being trafficked from Colombia, Venezuela, through Trinidad, through the rest of the islands, Jamaica, and then the entry point in Miami. Now, the way I would solve that, similar to how Colombia has done it, is legalize the drugs. Legalize in time to distribute, legalize the production of it if they want to produce marijuana and things in Trinidad, because that's what people are killing people over. And if Trinidad and Tobago truly wants the crime to stop, you have to address the root of the problem. Part of it anyway, which is the drugs. So I'd legalize it, put out the little warnings, create a license where people could use the drugs, I guess 18 and over, and just legalize it that way, because crime would drastically fall because, one, it's not fun anymore to do it. I think people do take part in the drug trafficking because of the thrill of it. And then two, the money. The drugs money is part of what is helping sustain the economy right now, or the underground economy outside of oil and gas and shit.
Okay. All right, so let's get back to the music.
Yeah, we went down a heavy road there.
Listen, I wouldn't be a right journalist if I didn't ask you the questions. Like I said, I pay attention to what you're saying, right?
I mean, it's idealistic. I'm sure people probably watching me funny, but that's how I would solve it. I'm sure that there are capable leaders in Trinidad and Tobago too that have the solutions to everything.
Right.
Don't need no outside intervention. You don't need the UN. You don't need the US. You don't need the UK. Everybody in Trinidad and Tobago has a piece of the puzzle on how to solve crime. They just don't have the power to do so because of the current setup, right?
Right. Okay. So what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions about DJs and the DJ life?
That it's easy. That you could just press a button and become a DJ. It's not true. I have a friend right now I'm actually, I don't want to say teaching, but I'm advising them on certain things on how to use the programming. And the first thing that they're telling me is like, wow, this is a lot of work. Because it is. It's time consuming. You have to set up your library. You have to go and figure out how to get music. You have to then, after you do all that, then you have to go and set aside time for practice. Like, I was DJing since I was about 14 years of age, and professionally 17 years of age with my first club gig and weddings and baby showers and things like that. And what I've learned is that practice is key. And big up Private Ryan as well for this. He's the one that say, without practice, you're not prepared. So what you'll find out is that in order to transition and do what you need to do, comes from hours of practice.
So how many hours do you spend practicing?
I'd say now that I'm touring, I try to set aside like 2 to 3 to 4 hours a week if I can. When I'm on the road, it's impossible. But when I'm home and I'm able to like hit in the studio, I will try to at least set aside 2 to 4 hours. And part of that comes from mixing. Part of that comes from like the old syndicated shows that I'm on. But at least I could record it and listen back to say, oh, these songs don't mix well together, or this is a mistake, or this really works. Let's try this in a party. But practice is
I was just going
key.
to ask, yeah, so part of the practicing, right? Do you take that and make it a mix, or do you actually set time aside and say, hey, today I'm going to actually make this mix?
Both. So believe it or not, a lot of the mixes that are out online right now, there's at least 2 or 3 variations in our practice session. So the mix that, for example, the Carnival Cool Down mix that just came out, there are 3 other mixes like that I have on my phone that I would have listened to and say, yeah, this is a mistake. This sounding like shit. Let's cut that. When we record again, we'll know not to mix this song with that song.
Pretty cool. So how often do you listen back to those mixes that,
all the time. So the greatest thing about me, I'm traveling a lot, right? So while I'm driving, flying, or on the subway here, I can actually just pull out my phone and listen to it and say, yeah, okay, this sound good or this sound like shit.
What tells you if something sounds good or not? What do you use to decipher that?
Usually transitions. Like most people can hear it. Like if a DJ didn't mean to do something or like something immediately clashes, you can hear it.
Okay.
Like for example, like a fast song and a slow song. You could tell once you slide that thing over or do the transition that it does not sound good.
Well, I have to say, yes, not being like a certified music person, I guess I can sometimes hear what transitions, and you probably will hear more than me. But I know for me as the patron, what I don't like is I don't like DJs to talk too much. That is a buzz killer. I will skip right by a mix. If you are talking too much or it's too much,
the sound effects,
I'm just like, why do you have to do that? So I am glad to say that your mixes, I've never encountered that.
Oh, thank you.
And I also like the fact that you have a list where people can figure out the songs.
List,
because that's the thing too. Like I can't tell you how many times I would listen to a mix from somebody. I don't know the song, but I know I like it. I'm just like, well, how am I gonna find out? So I could actually listen to it. So that is like a cool thing. So I know for me, that's what I don't like.
Yeah. And I'm, like I said, I'm also a consumer too. So I listen to like a lot of radio as well in the Caribbean. So St. Vincent, Grenada, Barbados, Trinidad, of course. And yeah, I have the same problems like everyone else. I don't know what song this is. And Shazam only gives you like 10% of what's playing in the Caribbean. So I know that's helpful to people. Yeah. And that used to drive me crazy as a consumer. So
that's cool. It's good that you look at that like that from the consumer point. I feel I do the same too from the journalistic perspective, or like even like working in hard news, like in the streets and stuff. There will be people that are just putting mics in people's faces in the worst situations. And I'm like, if you put yourself into that position, if you were that person, how would you feel that a mic is just in your face? So like, I always look at those perspectives. So it's nice when people do, because I feel like a lot of times people are just in places and they don't think about how they would feel. And I think that's really key.
And that's why it's important to be passionate about what you do, right? I think that in our DJ space right now, people are, that's a wild statement. I'll phrase this very carefully. I think there's a handful of people who are in our space in entertainment and DJs that are just in it to be cool or to get girls or to make money or whatever bad intentions they have without actually loving what they do or being intentional in being a DJ for the love of the music.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about your traveling, right? You've been plenty of places. What would you say has been your most unexpected place where soca was like really appreciated?
Oh, well, you know the answer already, Japan. I think that Japan has a very interesting appreciation for soca music, and I'll tell you why. They're light years away from the US in terms of infrastructure and technology, but their culture is very conservative, meaning that they're very orderly. They have to do things by the book. If the train coming at 5:07, best believe it coming at 5:07 and doors close at 5:08.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that rigidness, the Japanese don't really have a way to express themselves freely through creativeness. Although yes, they have the anime and yes, they have creative foods like ramen and all them different things. But what soca and Caribbean music on a whole has done for them is give them that self-expression that we've had in the Caribbean for a long time, right? We're able to express ourselves freely, sometimes overly sexually, as people would argue. I saw you argue that the other day as well. And the thing with that is, for them, it's freedom. The same way I spoke about the Freetown Collective song and how people get on bad in a fete, that's what they need. So watching how soca is well received there, and more so dancehall, because dancehall is still more popular there, dancehall and reggae, it's a surprise to me, but I understand why. And for music to reach Asia, I think that we've been targeting the wrong places. Like, the genre on a whole wants to break into the US market, which I get from Turn Me On from Kevin Little, Tempted to Touch, the Differentology from Bungie. But I think that Asia and Africa are two under-tapped markets that we need to break into for soca to really travel. Because the US, no disrespect, is kind of behind on international music. And what I found with all the hits that would have broken through in the US market, especially in Afrobeats and the K-pop, were big in Europe, Asia, and Africa before they even hit the States.
Is there a particular country that you haven't played that you would love to go and play?
That's a good one. I would say Nigeria, Tanzania, and Mauritius. So yeah, most of Africa, I've not played in the continent at all, actually.
Have you been to those places at all?
No. The closest I've been to is Malta, and Malta is like in between Europe and the northern coast of Africa.
So you haven't been to Africa, period? Like
I've not been to Africa, period.
Okay. Yeah, it's time to change that. I went to Tanzania last year, and I actually did a study abroad in Senegal.
What?
Yeah,
so you had the best jollof rice.
Yeah, so
you know that they originators of jollof.
Yes. And it's crazy. I didn't know that it was called jollof for like the longest time, because obviously, so they speak Wolof. So everything was like in Wolof translation or French. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, I just knew the rice was the chebouillap, because that's what they call it. Well, that's the beef. The chebouillap, cheboujen is with fish. It wasn't actually until recently I saw this like thing between people from Ghana and people from Senegal. I'm like, who has the best jollof rice? I'm like, oh, that's jollof rice. I never knew, because I was still calling it the Wolof version. Chebouillap, cheboujen. So yeah, but Senegal's a nice place. Love it.
Hope to play there one day.
Yes, they would love it, because listen, sidetrack, Senegal had some of the best clubs I have ever been to in this world, okay? And when I went there, when I did my study abroad there, which was crazy, is that at the time, people looked at me like I had 10 heads. Like, who goes to Senegal? Why are you going there? People were asking me, do they have traffic lights? Do they have this? Do they have that? It was nuts. And when I tell you, like, they had the best nightlife, the best clubs, better than the US, like all the kinds of music and everything. Mm-hmm. But fast forward how much years now, every time I'm scrolling on a feed, somebody's in Dakar. Someone says something like, oh, now it's the thing to do. But when I went, nobody was looking at that. But it's just amazing to see how it's progressed. But even then, I felt they were light years ahead and stuff. It's really funny to me how sometimes they put this label third world country on different countries. And like, I find they're more advanced than what the first world country is supposed to be. So, but that was a really great experience. So I hope you get to go there to play one day, because that is amazing. All right. So you opened up for different big soca icons or whatever. Shell, Patrice. Mm-hmm. What was a moment that was like really like for you? Oh my God, wow, I can't believe I'm here.
I would say recently, and maybe it's because I advocated for this man's music, Lyrical. Lyrical did a performance for the Trinidad Carnival season. And before he even touched the stage, because I was opening for Lyrical, before he even sing his first song, Lyrical say, you know what, we're going to give a round of applause to DJ Gel for being an advocate for soca music. And hear me now, I say, but this happening for real? I was like, well. And nobody got it on film, by the way. But everybody just, gave a round of applause and started to cheer. And I was like, well, this can't be real. I was like, this real? So I think that was a defining moment for me. And I would say when I started touring as well. So my first real big show outside of the Caribbean and the States would have been in Sydney, Australia. So I went pre-COVID to perform. And yeah, I think it was the first unorthodox place I've ever played in.
What was that like?
Sydney is interesting too. They, again, love dancehall a little bit more than soca, but it was great to see the different perspectives of people who've never been to the Caribbean enjoying our music as well too.
Oh, all right, cool. Nice. So, I know you work with Sirius XM and some other things, Apple Music, whatever. What do you try to do to make sure that, I guess, soca has its visibility on those kind of platforms or in other places?
The biggest thing for me is working with the artists to make sure that their music is distributed. I think the number one problem that we have as an industry is that a lot of these songs that the artists put out hit the streaming platforms late. So everyone prioritizes YouTube, but you can't stop at YouTube. When you upload your song, how are people going to find out? Like we just spoke about the track list and how when you Shazam a song, it doesn't come up. So for me, it's making sure that the artists, first and foremost, have the streaming platforms top of mind, and then that they have a marketing plan, and that they're able to push and do interviews as much as they can so that our music is well represented in these spaces. On the back end for the labels is educating them on what our music is, where it comes from, and making sure that there's at least a space on their platform to acknowledge that we exist.
How do you feel about soca music crossing over to other places? Because I feel like sometimes there's this kind of feeling that in order to cross over, they kind of have to water down the music, kind of to speak, or mix it with something else. How do you feel about that?
I don't think we have to mix our music with anything, in my opinion. I know that's controversial because I'm not an artist or a producer. But based on where I've played in the world and my experience, we don't need to water down anything. I think that with Jamaican dancehall, with reggaeton, with dembow, most people in the world don't understand Spanish or don't understand anything that these people are saying, but the rhythm works, the vibe works. Even in Afrobeats, they don't speak half these languages, but the vibe works again. So it's not that we have to water down our music. What we should do is make it a little bit more relatable, like Cass Cocoa Tea. Everyone can relate to being cool and want to heat up like a little something. And just consider like the wider audience. Not everything has to be about Carnival. You could sing about love. You could sing about breakups. You could sing about having something to eat and all. Like there are different things that you could touch on that don't have to be Carnival related. And I think that a lot of our artists feel like they're in a box when they don't need to be. The Someone Else song from Dominica, which is a bouillon song, right? That really got big in the soca world. It was about a breakup. I hope you find someone else. And everybody could relate to that. So I think it's more about just changing the lyrical content, not the beat, not fusing it with trap, not fusing it with Afrobeats, but keeping what our sound is, but just writing it to be a little bit more relatable to life experiences. And less about the jump and wave and the bumper and the putting on a carnival costume.
Okay, cool. So what was the significance of you launching soca music on Sirius?
It was the first time I think they ever had a soca music channel. So big up to Bob Marley's Tough Gong Radio. That would be Sadella Marley, who is his daughter, Bob Marley's daughter. She wanted to find a space that would have allowed for Caribbean music on Sirius, as well as African music. So they would have launched Tough Soca, Tough Beats, which is Afrobeats and Afropop, and their regular channel, which has Bob Marley's collection mixed in with some of the popular reggae music. And the significance of that is just having a platform. We never really had these spaces before. And it's important that we have the visibility because, again, our music is getting more and more popular. And as opposed to an outside entity running with it, we have ownership of it.
So DJ is like your full time right now,
Yes.
right? Were you ever doing any work before?
Yes.
So I saw that you had actually done work with trying to promote people of color to donate bone marrow. Was that the job that you were doing before, or was it something else?
Yes, I actually worked for a non-profit right out of university, actually. So, actually, I lied. In university, I was an intern for a non-profit that worked with different communities that would needed a bone marrow transplant, whether you had blood cancer like leukemia, lymphoma, or even blood disorders like what affects people of African descent, like sickle cell disease. And the biggest thing for me, I was studying marketing at the time, which ultimately helped me in my career too. But I was doing marketing for this nonprofit because they had difficulty reaching people of color to learn more about sickle cell disease and how donating things like bone marrow can actually help people of color survive or get a second chance at life.
So what made you want to do that kind of work or work with that particular sector?
So again, back in university, I did a lot of nonprofit work. I actually worked, no, I lie. I worked with the American Cancer Society on a project, because back then, when you have Caribbean parents, they want you to be a lawyer, engineer, or a doctor. So I went down the doctor route. I wasn't truly happy with it, but I wanted to find something within medicine that I was happy of doing without having to deal with all the nuances of being a doctor. And I was like, okay, public health seems kind of cool. I could be a little creative here. I could use my marketing brain because that's ultimately what I wanted to study. And I was like, okay, I'll try this out. I had a school program that allowed me to learn more about that. And because of that, I learned about all the different health disparities that exist within the US. Meaning, people of color, like us, are least likely to go and get care. And because I learned that, I was like, okay, maybe I should go and explore that a little more. And learning about how we're disadvantaged, especially Afro and Indo-Caribbean people, because we don't like to go to the doctor. We don't like to get our annual checkups. I even have a friend of mine in the industry who is not doing well right now because of that. But yeah, I'd always had like a little passion for that too. Like outside of music, I always want us as a people to do better, whether it's customer service, crime, tourism. I've always had a passion to advance us even beyond the music.
Nice. It's funny that you even bring up like the doctor stuff. I was just having that conversation today, but it happens a lot.
It happens. Trauma, generational trauma. It's a thing.
Exactly. Time to break it. All right. So I like to do a section where I do like a this or that. So you tell me which one you prefer.
Right.
Power or groovy soca?
Both.
Both. Okay. Small sweaty fete or big stage concert?
Big stage. I don't like to sweat either.
I don't like to sweat either, but the small fetes tend to have vibes.
The irony is that's what I'm playing for after this interview. And it's going to have vibes. It's just I'm going to be leaving with my shirt off and things. So.
All right. Doubles in Trinidad or patties in Jamaica?
Doubles in Trinidad.
Would you prefer to DJ at a carnival or at a music festival abroad?
Carnival.
Soca remix or original rhythm?
Original rhythm.
Okay. This might be a little spicy, but I'm going to ask anyway. Patrice or Destra?
Destra is the better vocalist. Patrice is the future. Let's see. Ooh. I'll say Patsy. Me and Patsy have the same last name. We might be related. So.
Okay, all right. Do you prefer classic soca or new?
Define new. What year we calling?
Within the last 10 years, compared to a Kitchener or Sparrow.
These are hard, boy. No.
All right. Soca from Grenada or St. Lucia?
Where you get these questions? I like my job. I like my Denver too. Grenada.
All right. Would you prefer a sunset or like a late fet or a breakfast fet?
Breakfast.
Yeah, I prefer breakfast fet too.
I could get up for the breakfast party.
Yeah.
I could get up for most things. I could get up
Yeah.
for flights and I could get up for breakfast fets. Easy.
Okay, and I think the last one I probably know, but I'm going to ask, would you prefer to bust a wine or bust a sweat?
Bassa wine.
Yeah, because I don't like to sweat either. All right. So what advice would you have for other upcoming DJs or creatives that are trying to get into this space?
Be intentional with what you want to do. Figure out what will make you stand out in the market. There's a lot of competition within the entertainment space right now, and the ones that do well have a unique selling point, something that makes them unique. They put in the work and they're consistent. I can't tell you how many times I've mentored people that just want to be big overnight or have the instant gratification without putting in the work. Being a DJ or being an entertainer is a lot of fucking work. Excuse the obscene, but
It's all right.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of sleepless nights that you'll just have to put in. But if it's something that you want to do, it's worth it.
All right. You know, did your parents ever think that you, or your family think that you were nuts for doing all of this?
Oh, yeah. I think that a lot of persons did not realize how big I was until they started to travel to other carnivals too. Like I remember my mom saying like she'd go to different bars and restaurants in Trinidad and Tobago and she's in disbelief that every single way you go, you're hearing DJ Gel. He's like, oh wait, that's my son. And then, yeah, the family had these similar reactions. Like, they did not realize how big I was until it started to travel.
That must be an amazing feeling for them, though.
Oh, yeah.
See that now. I think, like, my family had the same feeling, too. Like, my father, for instance, I know they didn't like me traveling all the time. Like, you need to stay put, set down roots, do this, do that, whatever. But you know, once they started seeing like me enjoying things or me being able to put out content and stuff, it's like they couldn't stop talking about it. They're telling everybody that would listen. It's like, you know, a sense of pride for them too, because I feel like also, even though, you know, I guess going back to the generational things about, you know, the standard, buy a house, do this, or whatever, they didn't get to do those kinds of things.
Correct.
So now, you know, even though, yes, they wanted me to do this, do that, or whatever, but they're seeing it and it's like a product for them to actually see, like, now they're living through us to be able to do that. So I think that's a
because we're growing up in a different time, right? Cell phones were not available for them when they were growing up. So now we have a whole new level of opportunity through the internet that they did not have.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually a blessing and a privilege that we get to travel and see the world, because in the past, in order to do that, you'd have to be with a record label or blow up really big or have huge financial resources to do so. But now, with the power of a phone, you can do whatever you want, work from wherever you want, and make a living.
Seriously. All right. If you had to describe your DJ journey by naming 3 foods from Trinidad, 3 dishes, how would you describe it?
Just 3 dishes?
If you had to narrow it down to 3.
Bacon shack.
Why?
Bacon shack has different ingredients, right? So it's different things that would have led to the journey. Because you have the bake, then you're filling it with shack. You have your pineapple, lettuce, cucumber, tomatoes. Then you have the different sauces. So it's all these different ingredients that make this unique and significant sandwich.
Okay. Number 2?
Pilau.
Okay.
Similar concept, because you have the rice, the chicken, the pumpkin, the pigeon peas, the coconut milk, your green seasoning and stuff. And again, all these different ingredients make one unique dish.
All right. 3.
Callaloo.
And the mix with callaloo?
The callaloo would be You're putting my chef skills to the test, you know. It's dasheen bush, or taro leaves as you know it in the States. Okra, pumpkin again, green seasoning, side, shadow benny, coconut milk, and the different spices. Again, different ingredients, one unique blend.
Awesome, cool. Well, this was fun. Thank you. It's a pleasure. What a great conversation. But you know, we couldn't leave the spot without tasting some of the Dominican flavor it has to offer. But if you want to know more about what we ate and hear our thoughts, then you'll have to catch that on It's Pretty Good with Mel. Stay tuned.